When I talk to the client or the prospect for the first time, I want to gather good data, and I want my CRM to now be the source of truth.
People don't like to read the written word as much as they like to listen to podcasts, and you can take any written document, book, whatever, and turn it into a podcast using the AI in Notebook LM.
Yeah, AI is everywhere. AI is fast. AI is crazy right now. It's moving so quickly. It's almost impossible for anybody to keep up with any one thing. How do I end up keeping one person in HubSpot with the company, with the client records he's associated with or she's associated with, personal and commercial, along with all the policies that impact them?
No matter how good you think your data is, it's largely not good. There's a very small number of agencies out there that have pristine data, and they all do the same things over and over again.
HubSpot's already incorporated a lot of AI, but no different than Salesforce, no different than Zoho, or anybody, no different than Microsoft. The future is AI. So just having a phone call with somebody, you're going to be able to transcribe it. You're going to be able to populate data fields. You're going to be able to have it cleaned up, and you're going to be able to run forward with it without having to retype anything.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Power Producers Podcast, where we are refining and redefining the sales game. And one of the ways we do that is through technology, and the buzzword of today and every day for the last year and probably for the foreseeable future is AI. And I think that there are a lot of misnomers about how AI can help us, but there are things that we can learn to do better that will make it a better process for us. And so I decided that we would bring on Mr. David LeFevre from Sales Power, who many of you have heard before. Obviously, if you listen to the podcast, you know that he is heavily ingrained in Florida Risk Partners and the Killing Commercial community, and he has got some really cool updates on some things that he has been able to do through his company Sales Power with HubSpot, specifically linking to agency management systems and pushing data around, but also has some opinions and some information on how we can use better data or clean our data up to make use of AI much more accurate and easy to do in the agencies. So with that being said, I'm going to shut up for a second, let him set the table, and he can take it and run with it for a little bit.
Awesome. Thank you, David. Appreciate you having me on the podcast and giving me the opportunity to talk to everybody again. So generally speaking, yeah, AI is everywhere. AI is fast. AI is crazy right now. It's moving so quickly. It's almost impossible for anybody to keep up with any one thing. But, I've seen a lot of demos. I've read a lot of articles. I'm trying to keep up with AI when it comes to insurance. And, everything I'm seeing is like, it gets you, if you had a scale of 1 to 100, or like it used to be in the telecom world, it was always around the last mile. They talked about, we've got to do this work. Well, I can do 80% of it really easily by putting distribution lines out there, but the real meat and potatoes, the hardest part of doing it all, maybe twice as hard as what I did already, is that last mile. It's like pulling the pieces together and actually making it work. So I've watched demos. I've looked at things where it's like they're going to show us something really great, and then boom, it doesn't work like it's supposed to. Well, that's not unusual right now. That's just, there is no perfect system. There is no perfect AI. So, why is that happening? Why is this going on? What is taking place on that? And I look at it, and, I've had an opportunity to work with several clients, to work with several agency management systems. We work with HubSpot. That's primarily it. And what I think really drives a lot of the issues is going to be the need for your data and having good data. I was on a HubSpot call the other day, and somebody said that in order for AI to really work, you have to have clean, unified data. Then you can do what you want with it. Because if you don't have that good data, AI likes to make things up, but it also can't think. It just works with the data that's presented and spits it out. And so if you don't have good data, how can you get AI to do what you need to do? And, if you look at how data works inside of insurance, you start off with somebody reaches out to you at an agency, gives you some information. They want a quote, or maybe they just want information. You're working with it, you're massaging it. And then what do you do with it? You go, well, I'm going to go and ask 15 carriers, 5 carriers, whatever it is. I'm going to ask them to give me a quote. So you're sending data to these carriers, partial data to these carriers. And now carriers have that information. They're getting more information because they're filling out an application, maybe if they win the business. And now you've got that. But now you're sitting here with data in your database, whatever you're using, could be your AMS, could be your CRM. You're dealing with data at the carrier level. And then that carrier is updating information and it's going through Ivans or wherever it's going, because not everybody uses that. And it's ending up in your AMS. Maybe you manually put it in, maybe it's automatically ending. But bottom line is, you've got a client now with information in multiple places. How do you go about knowing you've got the right information? You might even have a client that's in your AMS 5 times. Why? Because they're sitting in a personal policy or a personal client record, or an insured record, if you want to call it that. They've got a business insured record or a client record. Maybe they're a secondary on somebody else's policy or multiple policies. Either way, you literally can have the same person sitting in multiple places. So how can you do all the things that AI promises, especially around, we can help you sell better, we can help you service better, we can give you better customer experience, when you have all this data and you don't know what's right, you don't know what's wrong. So I'm just curious, how do we fix that problem? Can we fix that problem? And it's not something that's going to happen tomorrow, but I think in the long term you can. So I want to just talk a little bit about that, David, and see what you think about that. What's your thoughts on that data being, it's in lots of places. How do we know what's right, I guess, is my question.
I've got a lot of thoughts, and the first one is I really wish Ryan Deeds was here with us, because he could probably take both of us to school with everything he knows about data in the insurance industry specifically. So Deeds, if you're listening to this, which I hope you are, we need to get you back on here with Mr. LeFevre so that we can have this conversation properly with the level of experience you have. However, I've got a couple of thoughts. I mean, my first one is this, and I don't want to throw you a curveball, so I don't mean to do that by any stretch, but the more that you talk and the more that I see other people online talking, CJ Hudson Pillar from Tennessee is a great example. Why do we even need an AMS? Like, how far are we away from HubSpot actually being able to function as both the CRM and the AMS if you build it out the right way? And I know that CJ has been able to do that. And the one thing that seems to be the hiccup for everybody so far has been the downloads. So to give you an example, and this may even be something similar to what you guys are doing with Now Certs now, but I believe the way that CJ gets the downloads into his system is he has to keep one seat with Now Certs only for downloads. It pushes that data into his HubSpot instance, and then every single thing he does from an AMS standpoint is done in HubSpot at that point. There is no use of an AMS. It's literally a vehicle to get the ALU files from the carriers put into the AMS and then pushed out in a readable format to the CRM. So, I mean, I guess my first question, and it could be a long answer, it might even be a really short one, but I mean, how close are we to being able to say, you don't really need both? You HubSpot and maybe some other customizable CRMs, which likely are far behind where HubSpot is right now, have that ability. You just have to be willing to build it out. That's number one. And then the second piece of it, well, answer that first, and then we'll get into the data.
So we're really there. It's already ready to happen. The pieces are in place to do it. The challenge is the trust to do it and confidence in the platform and the system to be able to walk away. I've had this discussion earlier today, actually. I was led to believe that one of the key things you had to have was something called immutable data. In other words, you need to have a platform where nobody from your agency can delete anything. Everything has to be saved. And so I've had this, I have a good friend that's an attorney, and he is, you never win an argument with him. But the concept of, do you really need immutable data? Well, I'm going to say, no, you don't. All you need is data that is not being accidentally deleted by your staff. You, as an owner, need to have confidence in the data that you have. So, for example, HubSpot allows you to control who can delete data. You can archive data, but you can't delete it. So I can set it up to where everybody in the agency, except for the super admin, the one person that controls everything, they can't delete anything. They can't delete notes. They can't delete records. They can't delete anything. They can look and they can edit all day, but they cannot delete anything. And if they edit anything, there's a log. All right. But the concept of immutable data, I say no, because David, if somebody was suing you for not doing something correctly, would you ever in a million years open up your database for them to go browsing through your data to see if you did not deliver something? Like, oh no, I don't believe you. I think you do have a recording. Let me go look in your data for it. You're never going to do that. That's never going to happen. So why, again, why do you need immutable data? You just need to have, you as an owner need to know that your data is not being deleted by your team because you've created the rules to not allow that to happen. But nobody's ever going to go perusing through your database anywhere to go look for data. Your attorney, you'll settle before you allow that to happen. So anyways, so that's that. And I didn't mean to go down that road, but I'm just saying that's a big deal. But we're close. We are there. If you wanted to not do it, I know another agency who's not using. Basically, they run everything off of HubSpot, and I'm not going to say who it is, but they don't. They use the AMS just because it's there, and that's about it.
Yeah, I mean, it just feels like minor tweaks, right? Like for the most part, because I know so many people are right there, and
I mean, you edit if you have to edit your customer data, you're doing it at the carrier site, correct? So I've got to go in. I've got a new address. I got a new phone number. If there's one place I have to do it besides my CRM, I need to put it up. It needs to go to the carrier. That's really where it should be. That they've got new policy information. They've got new contact information. It should be there. If it's in your AMS, I know that different systems work different ways. Some
Yeah, I
will
mean,
come
to give you
in
an
and they'll
example,
allow you to
if we're going
update
to
it.
change
Others
something,
won't. So
if we're going to change something on a client in Hawk, we need to do it in HawkSoft so that it'll generate the change request that we then sign for e-signature. Then once it's signed, we upload that to the carrier website with the, I mean, but that's a
yeah,
manual process at that point. There's no automation for it whatsoever. You
yeah,
go into the AMS, you make the change in your system where the data is stored. It generates the form. It gets pushed over to the e-sign platform, and then that part of it is relatively smooth. Then when you get that back, you have to download that attachment because it comes back to you as an email or it's in the web version and you download it. Then you have to go log into your carrier website, put the information in, upload the form, and then the other piece of it is depending on who the carrier is, you have to set flags for follow up and everything else to make sure they actually ever even process it, because a lot of the times you're uploading stuff into these carrier websites and there's not communication that tells you when the underwriter has actually made the change. So now you do it, you set a suspense in the AMS for a week, and then you follow up a week later to see where it is. If it's not there, you send a note to underwriting, set another
mm-hmm.
suspense. I mean, it's just there's still way too much manual stuff in the industry, and I'm trying to figure out why. Like, you would think that the insurance industry has enough money to solve any technology
No.
problem that there
Uh,
is, and
yeah.
it doesn't seem like it's any kind of a priority.
Well, you know how long it took to even get electronic medical systems to talk to each other and what had to happen. You're in the same boat. I mean, insurance is a big agent, it's a big industry. A lot of people touch it. You can't just say, "Hey, we're going to have this is where it's going to go, and that's going to be the end of it," because somebody's going to fight it, and it's just not going to happen. So, electronic medical systems, I used to do medical, so I understand it. It was a cluster. It was ridiculous. Nothing ever matched. But you know what else it was? It was cheaper. So now you've got a unified system. All the doctors have to use these systems in the same systems, but all of a sudden the price of service just shot through the roof. So is it really worthwhile to try to unify it in that way? Because you're just going to be adding cost to everybody to do it, because they're going to be, now we have forced to make changes that we may not need to do. So I'm not sure that there is a right answer to that. But what I will say is that the trick to back to clean unified data is you have to think of your contact points where they occur. So number one, when I talk to the client or the prospect for the first time, I want to gather good data, and I want my CRM to now be the source of truth. Number two, it's going to go to a carrier. I'm going to send it. That information is going to come back around, or it's going to be in my AMS and it's going to come back around, and it's now going to come down. Well, I might again have that person in multiple places. I need to find a way to touch those points before it comes in and updates what's in my source of truth to make sure that, okay, it matches, you're allowed in. It doesn't match, what do we do about it? And the only person that's going to fix that is going to be the human being that's in the middle of it. But they need to be presented with good options or with real options. So if I said something to the effect of, well, I just got a bad phone number that came in. It's formatted incorrectly. I'm using international standards in HubSpot where maybe the data I've got coming in doesn't. Well, it's not that it's a different phone number. It's just formatted incorrectly. So you can use things like AI to fix that and then present just the real problems. But the challenge to all of that and having good data is going to come down to the user. I just don't see any other way around that because there's too many different sources. But you can use AI, you can use logic to clean up a lot of it and not have to present them with every speck of data needs to be touched, just the critical things: phone numbers, emails, names, policies, and policy data. But primarily from a contact perspective, it's just the name, phone number, email address. Make sure and their physical address. Make sure that hasn't changed. Make sure I'm not introducing bad data. And when I have David LeFevre in my CRM, I know it's David LeFevre and I got his information: mobile phone number, home phone number, 5 different email addresses, whatever it is that I've got it right. But that's still going to have to come in play. But you have to have that data. And now add to that, you need to also know that because I've got people in different places, don't I need to know all the policies that they're impacted with? Because I've seen things out there right now that are saying, let us help you figure out what to upsell, what to cross-sell, how to provide better service. Here's their situation. Well, how can you do that when you've got Bob Smith appearing 3, 4, 5 times in your AMS correctly? By the way, this is not incorrect data. It is legit because everything in the insurance world is siloed by client. It's not siloed by a person. It's not siloed by a company. So it's client focused. It's account focused management, which is what it is. But you still can have the same guy or the same woman on 5 different places, but you're talking to them and you're trying to give them the best consulting advice, the best insurance advice, the best proposals. How can you do that effectively when you don't have data? You don't have all the policies that are actually touching them, good and current and past. I don't know if you can. Well, that's what we're trying to solve. That's what we're trying to put together. That's what we're building PowerSync. That's one of the things that we've been struggling with, and we're trying to find the solution for, and we're putting together is how do you take the person that exists 5 times in an AMS, maybe even coming from different carriers, if you think about it that way, coming down from Ivan's, I still have one person. How do I end up keeping one person in HubSpot with the company, with the client records he's associated with or she's associated with, personal and commercial, along with all the policies that impact them? If you can do that, then I think you've got a winning strategy for using AI to do the proposals, to do the upsells, the cross sells, and figuring out, how do I communicate and how do I provide the best customer experience for this client of mine or prospective client of mine.
So here's my comment about the data piece is it's garbage in, garbage out, man. The agencies that I know that have clean data have a process around that, right? Like it's a matter of making sure that people are going in, like producers are notorious for not putting all the information in. So the way you fix that problem is if it's not in the AMS, you don't get paid the commission on the account. That solves it relatively quickly. But even then, it's still not necessarily always put in the correct way. So then you have to combat that issue. So that's the first piece. The second piece is unless the information that is keyed into the AMS directly matches what the carrier is going to push through, you run into issues there. So we use
Yep.
Hawksoft, and this is not a knock. I want to be very, very clear. We're happy with Hawksoft. This is not a knock on Hawksoft whatsoever. I'm just telling you how it works. So that if you're a Hawksoft user, um,
Other systems do the same thing. I believe where you're headed to, it's Hawksoft's not alone.
yeah.
Same. It's a
So
problem system wide.
it's a
So.
mapped system, right? Everything is mapped, and it has to be to so, and it starts with the policy number. So
Hmm.
if there's a hyphen and you don't have the hyphen in Hawksoft when you put that in, or if there's a comma in the name of the company, is probably a more accurate way of doing it because we don't
Yeah.
always have the policy number when we're putting a prospect in. If there's a
LLC and
comma,
Inc.
yeah, if there's if it's ABC contractor, comma LLC, but when you put it into the rating system on the carrier's website, you don't have that comma there. When that download gets pushed through, it becomes an unmatched document because of
Yep.
that one comma missing. And it's a manual process to then go in and match all of that up. So that's just one piece. The other piece is the download, and this is from everything I've ever heard, again, across literally every AMS, the download doesn't always populate the fields the way that they should be populated in the AMS,
Hmm.
or it has the ability to overwrite things. So the agencies that really have the cleanest data that I'm aware of are the ones that have had in the past a manual process where they're auditing the data and the download on every single account on a daily basis to make
Hmm.
sure that happens. That is an insane amount of time for somebody to go through and do that. And you're also waiting, hoping that a human being is going to be able to stay focused enough to pay attention to all of that and handle that mundane task for however long it takes to
Yeah.
go in and audit all that data. What I've seen happen over the course of the last couple years is the rise in robotic process automation to where people are creating RPA bots that are going in and doing this to make sure that the data is getting cleaned up. And it's happening when we're sleeping at night so that it's done when you come in the next day.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see, but I mean, to your point, you have to have the data as clean as it possibly can be. I've talked to, Kerry Wallace, who evaluates it, who does agency valuations. I've talked to Deeds, who builds dashboards and is a data guru in the insurance industry. And every single one of them is going to tell you the same thing. No matter how good you think your data is, it's largely not good.
Yeah.
There is a very small number of agencies out there that have pristine data and they all do the same things over and over again. The problem is it's been a manual process. And to your point, with some of the AI stuff, even though this RPA is in place and it's working, how can we fully trust that to know that it's
Yeah.
actually doing what it needs to do? And are we adding another tool into
You
the
can't.
toolbox that you
Yeah.
still have to have somebody go back and audit it, even though you automated the process?
So I want to just make comment quick on this. So I was watching an RPA demo the other day, and hey, watch this, and then it broke. And why did and I had my developer on with me just watching it, and I had no idea. I just saw that it wasn't working. Let me switch over, and I'm not going to define who this was, but let me switch over and I'll show you this instead, and we'll watch this video. I was like, let's watch that and let's see what happened. And then I hang up the phone and I ask my guy, so what do you think happening? Oh, it's really easy. CAPTCHA. They threw a CAPTCHA in, and the bot couldn't get around it. That's all that happened. So apparently, I don't want to, again, maybe I'm wrong on this, but that was my first experience really watching somebody do that. But if the carriers decided they didn't want you to allow you to do that, they could stop you in a heartbeat. They just put up CAPTCHA mode. Are you human? And now you're not able to do it. So now you're back to the same process again. Or what you really need is an API that's going to upload. So APIs bypass all of that. So how can you build something that API then does an API into the carrier? So just a comment on something I thought it was kind of interesting. But I worked in the first half of my career, David. I did what was called outside plant conversion for telephone companies, and what we did was we took engineering records and migrated them and put them into what they called an automated facility management GIS system, but essentially a mapping system. And what it really was we were doing data cleanup and mapping. And what we found was, you know what? Everybody's allowed to make one mistake every day. Okay, you're allowed to have one. Can't have more, but you're allowed to have one. But a lot of people make more than one. So we'll start to compile that up. How many insurance people are in the business are entering data? One mistake a day times 365 days a year times how many years equals how much bad data. So you end up, there's no way to make it perfect. It's not going to happen. But, you got to still try to find a way to minimize the impact of it. So, yes, manually doing things. You don't want to rely on it because people are going to make mistakes. But at the same time, how do you minimize that? And, I think AIs can help you do that a lot by checking things out and saying, catching you in the moment, hey, this doesn't work. Okay. But it all comes down to process. It all comes down to wash, rinse, repeat. It all comes down to certain people do certain things the right way and certain people don't. And finding the right person that's going to do what you need to do and sticking, keeping up on how they're doing it. But, I still, I think about what you just talked about with having to do all the data into different places. And so the question is, hey, how can I streamline that process? How can I make that occur? I don't know the answer to that. I'm looking at it kind of reverse in saying that if I start with my client or I'm the one who created this data to begin with. I've got the person, they're in my CRM. I now want to control that. This is my source of truth. So if I'm using HubSpot, I get a lead, I talk to them on the phone, I collect the information. I now have that information inside of HubSpot. That's my source of truth. Anything else I get, I need to add to it, but I don't necessarily want to change it unless I validate that what's coming in is the correct thing to put on. Different phone number, different email address, different physical address, different name spelling, you name it. Okay, how do I make that happen? And this is what we're encountering already. We deal with this, we've already decided when we see a record that occurs, a new record in client record inside of Hawksoft or a insured record inside of NowSearch, that we're going to look for it inside of HubSpot if that's an unmatched record, and if it's not a perfect spelling, if the multiple pieces kind of don't fit, we're not gonna make it work. We're going to put up a flag that says, nope, we can't find something. We're going to email it to you and tell you, we've got a new insured record. We got a new client record. It does not exist in HubSpot, or we can't find it. Please go in and do this. And they'll add a number onto the record that it's supposed to be. We're then monitoring it. And then we go, okay, now we know it's right. We'll sync it over. And then we overwrite some data. We don't overwrite other data. But even if we overwrite, we still have another backup piece of data that tells you here's what's in your AMS versus here's what you have for an email address, a phone number, and a name. So you're still got both sets of data. But so as an agency, even go what you have out there in the world of your AMS, of your carriers and whatnot, you can still control what comes back into if your CRM is your source of truth, and ensure that your data is what you want, regardless of what anybody else has out there. And if done right, now you can take advantage of some of the tools, even HubSpot's, well, I'll just say this, HubSpot's already incorporated a lot of AI, but, no different than Salesforce, no different than Zoho or anybody, no different than Microsoft. The future is AI. And, there's some articles, some data out there, we're talking about $80 billion in the next 5 years of opportunities, et cetera. Bottom line is HubSpot's going to just be going more and more investment in the AI. I can't get into all the details and the things that I know, but I can tell you today what's out there. You can go into a customer record and ask Copilot, hey, tell me what's happened with this person in the last 30 days. And it will come back and summarize for you what's happened. It looks at tickets, it looks at deals, it looks at emails, it looks at notes. Okay, it looks at everything you've brought in, and it's able to give you a comprehensive view of what happened. Now, as a customer service rep, as an account manager, that probably is useful. As a salesperson, yep, I think that's useful too. Maybe not on new business, but on renewals would be helpful. But again, if you don't have all the information there to begin with, what's it do for you? You're missing things. You don't have it. Do tickets when you need to do tickets. Log calls when you log calls. You need to be connected to a phone system that allows you to put your transcripts into HubSpot, for example, and do your sentiment analysis against it into HubSpot. Why? Because that is going to be your source of truth. You've got a CRM that now controls everything, that is your database, that has everything you need in it, but you still need to control and optimize all that outside influence before it comes in to ensure that you've got clean data. So at the end of the day, you've got clean, your data is clean, your data is unified, and that it's associated correctly. So when you look at David Carruthers in the AMS, you might see him in 5 places, but in HubSpot, there's only one David Carruthers. Here's all my notes. Here's all my emails. Here's all my call logs. Here's all my information out of them. Here's all the deals we had. Here's all the tickets we have. Here's all the policy he has and all the policy information that he has. Now I can go through and use AI to basically say, tell me everything you know about David Carruthers and what I need to do to give him better policy service, to give him better coverage, to look at what he's missing, look at what he needs, he should have, what he has that he doesn't need, and be able to provide a better customer experience to make that work. And that's kind of where I see it going. It's not there yet. It's got a ways to go still, but it's not far because AI is moving so fast. Everything is moving so fast. But that should be the goal. That's where you should end up at. And the question is, how do you get there? And I don't know the answers to all of it, but I do know that there's people working on it, and it's stuff we're working on. And it is something everybody should, at least all agencies should be thinking about. And how do I do that? And how do I not get left behind? Because the first people that are able to do that are the ones that are going to be the winners at the end of the day. They're the ones that are going to be able to offer the best customer experience to their existing clients, the ones that aren't going to lose renewals, the ones that are going to keep their, they're going to be able to win the new business because they're providing better service, and the ones that can keep the old business because they're providing better service.
So you said something in there about the sentiment. Here's my question, because there's products out there now, and even inside of VoIP providers, where they're analyzing the phone calls is in addition to email correspondence and everything else. Is HubSpot at a point right now where if you attach the WAV file of phone conversations, since we're basically all recording our phone calls every day, to where it can analyze that and provide sentiment in addition to the other stuff? Or is that they're not that far down the road yet?
I don't think right now, I honestly don't know the answer. I don't believe that it's able to take the WAV file and then pull it out. What I do know is that if you're integrated with like AirCall, that's all happening. I also point out, I mean, there's some really cool stuff. I'm an AirCall partner as well, and where they're going, and I'm sure everybody else is going too. But you're able to have you have live transcriptions that are occurring while you're talking to the client. 2, it's able to come up and analyze. So if you had like,
that's fair enough. I wasn't even thinking about transcriptions. Right? So
you're bringing all that up, but they also do the sentiment analysis off of it. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I wasn't even thinking about it from that standpoint. AirCall will give you a transcription, and then that's a way that it can be analyzed as well. I mean, you're not going to pick up tone and inflection that way, but I'm not sure how much of that is actually picked up.
Well, they're doing it. They're doing it for you too, though. So, but they're also going through and saying what's coming out, at least, and I'm sure other providers are doing this also, is that as you're having the conversation, AI is reading what's being asked. It's what's being said, and it's going to prompt you for what's missing. Here's what you need to ask next. Here's what you need to ask next. Answer this question. And when they answer the question, you're now able to take that data and you're dropping it into a property or a field inside your CRM. And now you've got that information. So just having a phone call with somebody, you're going to be able to transcribe it. You're going to be able to populate data fields. You're going to be able to have it cleaned up, and you're going to be able to run forward with it without having to retype anything. All of that's going to happen. Now, I'm assuming somewhere down the road that same concept may apply when you get into carriers, when you're getting into quoting engines, that you're actually not going to sit down and have to type anything. You might just have to talk it and have it run through, and it will do it that way. Maybe and it will do better job than typing it in. I don't know. It's interesting. I know that like Wonderwrite is doing some pretty cool stuff. And I'm not going to get into details there, but and I'm sure that others are doing the same thing. How can we use AI to capture this data, and how can we use it to put it in the right place, especially when you have thousands of supplements and thousands of applications, and everybody's different. Again, that's back to that. You're never going to change that, because if you do, it's going to make it more expensive. Look at electronic medical systems and just how that's happened. So, how do you get insurance to do that? It's just not going to take place. Not anytime soon. Not while we're still in working, right? We'll be long gone by that time. But yeah, there's lots of answers to be had there. My whole argument, though, is that without unified, clean data, or as you said, by the way, old school terms, garbage in, garbage out, that if all you've got is garbage, how can you expect to get anything but garbage out? If you've got to find ways to look at what you're bringing in, to look at what you're managing, to look at what your source of truth is, to be able to say, this is good data. So when I do use these AI tools, I'm comparing policies, I'm reading through, making suggestions on what I should be offering this particular prospect at this moment, that you're actually doing it off of data that's clean, that's accurate, and that's complete. And I don't know, we're working our way towards that, but I just wanted, and I know HubSpot's working their way towards that. I know Salesforce is doing the same way. I mean, this is the world. This is the challenge that we have. And it eventually will get there, but it's just going to take a while for that to happen. And I think everybody just needs to be aware of, right now, AI, it's 80%, and the hardest 20% is yet to come. They haven't figured that out yet, because you can't do it without the good data. Reading articles. I mean, I don't know, David, have you tried Notebook LM yet from Google? Okay. So do you know what it is?
Yeah, I think it's the thing. I actually heard a soundbite of Mark Cuban talking about in a panel he was on in a reel. I could be completely wrong, but I want to say he said that people don't like to read the written word as much as they like to listen to podcasts, and you can take any written document, book, whatever, and turn it into a podcast using the AI in Notebook LM.
Okay. Well, that's part of it. What I am using it for right now, and I want, this is new, right? I haven't really gone through it, but as I understand it, Notebook LM allows you to create notebooks where you define the source of the data. You can choose web pages, you can upload documents, you can choose videos, etc. But at the end of at bottom line is, you're creating a notebook that says, here's the sources I want to use. Don't use anything else. Okay. So now when I ask my Notebook LM a question, it's going to not go out into the internet. It's not going to use ChatGPT. Who knows where the sources are coming from? It's going to use what you defined as your data set to give you a response back that you're looking for. This is really no different. I have a data set of my client data, and I want to ask AI to tell me about my client. Well, if I'm able to say, this is where you go and everything you need is here, I can get good information out of it. But if I have to leave it up to somebody to say, well, it could be anywhere, okay, then I don't know if I have the real, if my AI was hallucinating, if it was making up answers because it couldn't find the answers. I don't know it. That's really where it's all going. There's another Delphi. Have you seen Delphi yet? Delphi allows you to clone yourself. Okay, there's a George B. I can't remember his last name, but George B. HubSpot guy. Okay, I saw him and I'm like, oh, I got to see this. Where is this coming from? He's now created the HubSpot helper. And what is it? He's created his clone on Delphi where he loads up all his data. It's all there. And he's now charging what, $25 a month or something like that, where you can go in and ask the HubSpot helper, and it's not pulling in any information other than from him and his data to tell you here's the answer based upon what George B. Thomas. Here's what George tells you the answer is based upon all the data, all my podcasts, all my recordings, all my blog posts, and everything I've written over the years is dumped in here, and it's my information. In other words, I can now use AI to ask a question, limiting the data sources to only those sources I want.
That's what Chris Green's doing right now.
Yeah, saw that too.
With his
Yep.
flood stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because he's created, I don't know if this other one is doing it this way or not, but Chris has created an AI avatar of himself, and you're literally having a conversation with the avatar that's pulling the information it's repeating back to you from that defined set of data.
Yep, and that's what Delphi is doing, the same thing. So Delphi, though, it's all set up. You just pay $30 a month or $100 a month, depending, or $300 depending upon what you want. And I'm doing this for one of my clients, so not a non-insurance client. And so he's a coach, he's a mentor, and he helps chiropractors and medical providers when they're dealing with personal injury, and attorneys, and how to do better business. And he's written books. We've done hundreds of things, and yeah, we're loading it all in there. So basically we're cloning him. So now we're going to make it available to members to say, hey, you can go here and ask questions of Michael, and it's only Michael's information that's coming back. It's not distorted from the rest of the world. But that's really what we're talking about here. When we talk about clean, unified data, is what is our data source? Is it right? Is it what we want to use? And is it whole? And if it's not, how can you expect AI to give you back good answers? You can't, because it'll make things up. It's not going to tell you it makes things up. It's going to read good. It's going to sound good. It's going to look professional, but it's going to be wrong. And we all know that, right? This is nothing new. ChatGPT, use it, but don't use it. Okay. You need to rewrite it. You still need to be expert. You need to be the expert to take ChatGPT data, written information, and plug it on a blog post. Because if you're not the expert, you have no idea if it's right or wrong.
Yeah, and I mean that's why I'm very leery about using it for anything other than formatting my own stuff that I've already created. You know what I mean? Like my use of ChatGPT is not as much to go out and have it create content by pulling information in from all over the internet. It's more along the lines of taking this podcast, for example, and running it through Otter AI, which is already in here, and giving me a transcript, and then I can take that and run it through Chat GPT, give me a summary of the podcast, give me the key points, any quotable quotes that I want to push out to Twitter that come from the podcast. Then I go in and I'll take and ask it to create an outline for a long form blog post of roughly 2,000 words that talks about what we discussed on the podcast. And then I actually have it take that transcript and organize that into a blog post with the appropriate H1, H2 headings, optimize it for SEO, identify the anchor text and keywords and all of this other stuff. And that's literally what we do with almost anything I do on Zoom at this point. So even with the Killing Commercial calls, that we do the summary for the call, then we do the recap for the call. So that if somebody didn't get to see it live and they want to determine whether or not it makes sense for them to invest an hour into one of those calls, they can read the summary. And if it says, yeah, it's actually, let me check the recap. So I take 30 seconds to look at the summary. I take 3 to 5 minutes to read the recap. And if I think, you know what, I probably do need to hear all the commentary and everything else, I'm going to go ahead and invest the hour into listening to the call now. Or no, this is really good info, but I really don't need anything more than what's here. And it just makes life so much easier and to organize things, because it even to put it into more understandable terms too, because in the insurance industry, I could go off on a million different
Right.
explanations to a client or a prospect of something and be talking over their head the entire time when I
Hmm.
could use that to water things down. So listen, we've got 4 minutes before the top of the hour. You've talked about all of this stuff. I want to make sure that you have the opportunity to tell everybody listening to this how you're actually helping agencies do this stuff right now and how they can get in touch with you.
Got it. Got it. Appreciate it. Well, one is just to get in touch with me. It's salespower.com, but it's not POWER. It's salespwr.com. And on that, you can read all about what we're doing. But generally, I'll just tell you what we're moving to. So I've been doing HubSpot for a long time. And, I've been working with insurance agencies now for the last 5 years, including Florida Risk. And, I'm part of Killing Commercial. So I hear a lot, see a lot, am involved in a lot. And we built a product called PowerSync, which what it does is it syncs your AMS data with HubSpot. It takes on those challenges. And where we're moving to is we're creating something called our PowerSync Client Experience Hub. And what that is it's focused on customer support and account management. Okay. Sales is sales. I understand that everybody does it different. I've focused on sales, and I will tell you it's always a challenge to roll agencies into the sales part of HubSpot because they all want to do it different and nobody has a documented process, or very few do. But what we're looked at is we there's always a need for better customer service. I can roll you out with HubSpot's Service Hub, which will drastically improve your customer service and account management within 30 to 60 days. It doesn't take long to roll it out. It's easy to use. There's some wonderful benefits with it, like unified inbox. You've got AI assistance. You've got, the ability for ticketing. You are able to do things without losing things. Information doesn't fall through the cracks. Whether people call in, whether they email in, whether they text in, whether they use a chatbot to come in, it's all coming into one place. It's all being managed through ticket management, and it's easy to use. Now, when you add in the client data that we're bringing in, we can also it's easy to onboard. I can take all your AMS data and I can have all your contacts and all your company records, your client records imported and loaded into HubSpot in a matter of a couple of days. Done. We've got everything there. If you want to go to the next level and you want policies, we do the same thing with that. However, I will say we are switching over to where for those people that don't want to go the full route and all you want to do is work with contacts and clients where you only need HubSpot Pro, we're going to do that. For those that want to do renewals and want to do policy management and be able to see all that data, we have that. That's up and running and that's available, and that you need enterprise to do it. It's a larger investment on your part. I do believe everybody should be on HubSpot Enterprise because of the tools, but that's where we're headed to. We have the Client Experience Hub is launching. It's really 99% there. All I have to do is get the website updated at this point. And we're going to be offering, we offer agencies the ability to not disrupt their sales, but to totally disrupt their account management and their client services to do it better, faster, and easier on HubSpot.
So quickly, because we've only got a minute, I think a lot of people are under the impression that HubSpot is exorbitantly expensive, and they have made some modifications that I know that we have talked about in terms of what it would cost for somebody to get in, maybe not necessarily have the full-blown enterprise version or whatever. But can you speak to that for just a couple of seconds quick before we wrap up?
Yeah, HubSpot now has a per seat licensing. So you can, depending upon how you're configured, you can be anywhere in there. Well, I can't speak to tomorrow because everything happens so fast. But today, if you want to, enterprise is $150 a seat, pro is $100 a seat, and then you have a core user, which is half or $75 a seat or $50, depending upon what you have, whereby they can do everything but take advantage of either the sales or service tools. And then you also have a view only, where you can have people that can see the data. They can't edit the data, but they can add notes. So it's where you can have VAs essentially accessing your data for nothing and doing things and adding notes, where you can have your users, your salespeople, your service people are using the more expensive seats. But it doesn't matter. You can have one person, it's $150 for Service Enterprise, or you can have 10 people where it's $100 a month for Service Pro. And usually, if you want to sign an annual deal or a multi-annual deal where you pay up front, there's like, if you pay up front, there's automatically a 10% discount per year. But if you go multi-year contracts, you can maybe get it even reduced beyond that. But we don't negotiate for HubSpot. HubSpot, that's a between you and them to negotiate that price.
Got it. All right, man. Well, we need to wrap up because my next guy that I'm recording with is in the waiting room in his link. So I'm going to run. Thanks again for being on as always. And if you need him, reach out to him. And if you don't remember how to get a hold of him, reach out to me and I'll make sure I connect you. We'll catch you soon.
All right, David. Thank you very much.
Bye, man.